lucid and calm.
Was he concerned about his injuries?
He didn't seem concerned of his injuries at the time, which is not uncommon in traffic collisions. Many times people tend to be in shock. It's a traumatic experience, so it's not uncommon for people to be focused on unimportant things, or even if they are in pain, they might not feel it until much later.
So was the incident caught on your body cam?
Yes, my body camera was used per department policy.
Deputy, in the photos of the airbags, there's blood. We're trying to figure out everything that we're seeing. Did you see any injuries on anywhere other than the legs as you were just assessing him on site?
I did observe injuries. I can't speak as to the nature of the injuries. I'm not a trained medical professional, so I can't speak to that. What I can say is that he was injured, and he was successfully removed and taken to the hospital.
You saw that he had a seatbelt on?
He was wearing a seatbelt.
Did he have lacerations as well as the leg?
If he did, I was not able to see them do it to his clothing.
You've seen a lot of car accidents. Do you think this type of car saved his life, or do you think like a cheaper car, like you know how to get him?
As mentioned by the sheriff, that specific stretch of roadway is one of our trouble spots. Our locals in Rancho Palos Verdes and Rolling Hills Estates know that it's a hot spot for traffic collisions as well as speed. In my experience as a deputy who is traffic trained and worked a traffic car, I have seen many collisions. The nature of his vehicle, the fact that he was wearing a seatbelt, I would say that it greatly increased the likelihood that it saved his life.
Is this the worst accident you've seen on that stretch?
I will say no, because I've been doing this for a while and I've seen fatal traffic collisions. So I will say that it's very fortunate that Mr. Woods was able to come out of this alive.
Gonzalez, this is an accident-prone stretch, correct? We've seen a number of accidents on this specific stretch. Is that correct?
This stretch of roadway is downhill, it's sweeping. Speeds there, the speed limit is 45 miles per hour. Myself, when I'm doing speed enforcement, I will sometimes catch people going 80 plus miles per hour. So it's more of a thing that this, people see a nice stretch of road and maybe they're not watching their speedometer, or maybe they're in a hurry.
In your conversations with Tiger, were you ever concerned in the time that you spent with him that of his pain threshold, or that he was going to lose consciousness at all?
At the moment that I spoke to Mr. Woods, I was able to determine that it would have been safer for me to wait for LA County Fire because his condition seemed stable, and I did not want to risk further injuring him by trying to remove him myself.
Real strong front, but it'll pick the wind.
Is heartless. If you look at the cancellation,
And came down and was the one that directed me to the vehicle. As was indicated by the sheriff, there was another unrelated traffic collision that occurred several feet down the roadway, which I believe was due to people trying to look. And that also kind of distracted from what was occurring, because he was several feet off the roadway, so I think most of the attention that people were focused on was on the roadway.
One more question. Deputy, can you describe what the scene looked like inside the car? Did he have that space to look out the passenger side looking at the back?
As indicated by the sheriff, the interior passenger compartment of the vehicle was intact. The airbags did deploy successfully. Again, he was wearing his seatbelt. I think this also kind of speaks to the marvel of modern automobiles, and that they're much safer than they've ever been previously.
Deputy, any idea how many times the vehicle flipped?
We don't know that at this time. Sí.
¿Tiene preguntas en la escala?
Sí, ¿cuál es la pregunta? Sí, cuando llegué, me fijé adentro del vehículo y le pregunté al señor cuál era su nombre para ver si podía platicar conmigo. Me dijo su nombre, es cuando lo reconocí. En ese tiempo hice la decisión que sería la mejor decisión de esperar a los bomberos llegar para poder sacarlo del vehículo, porque en ese tiempo sus heridas no se veían tan serios que se me hizo tan importante para sacarlo en ese momento y arriesgar posiblemente dañarlo más.
Mencionó que algunas personas estaban diciendo que se había podido estar de pie,
No, cuando lo sacaron los bomberos, lo pusieron en un stretcher y así se lo llevaron.
Entonces, ¿sí portaba el cinturón de seguridad?
Sí tuvo puesto el cinturón de seguridad.
Español, por favor, español.
¿Alguna herida en la cabeza?
Eso no sé, no soy doctor ni soy profesional médico, entonces no puedo hablar sobre sus heridas.
¿Pero tú te lo viste? ¿Tenía sangre en la cara?
De eso no puedo hablar.
Lo que sí mencionabas es que eres
And maybe a few sprinkles.
Thanks, Jay.
See you later.
Tonight, the breaking news. Tiger Woods hurt in a serious car crash. His SUV rolling over as one of the greatest golfers of all time suffers multiple leg injuries following an early morning single vehicle accident in Los Angeles. The golfing legend rushed into surgery. This brand new CBS News video of his car 30 yards off the road, destroyed. His golf clubs laying nearby. The accident occurring just 2 months after his 5th back surgery. Tonight, the latest on his condition and what he told CBS Sports' Jim Nantz just 2 days ago.
Final round of the Masters. You're going to be there.
God, I hope so.
Intelligence failure. Officials in charge of Capitol Hill security during the assault testified for the first time, blaming federal law enforcement for not alerting them to the severity of the threat.
These criminals came prepared for war.
Ready? Millions of additional doses. Vaccine makers promise to ramp up production. And the UK variant nearly triples in New York City, just as it welcomes back fans to arenas. The crisis in Texas continues. Millions still without safe drinking water. Many left without a place to live as food banks struggle to meet demand. El Chapo's wife arrested in the U.S. The former beauty queen is charged with helping her Mexican drug lord husband run his multi-billion-dollar cartel. Why prosecutors say she's a flight risk. And Scouts Honor. We're going to meet some of the first female Eagle Scouts. Their inspiring journey tonight.
This is the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell, reporting from the nation's capital.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We're going to begin tonight with that breaking news that's rocking the professional sports world. Golf legend Tiger Woods, one of the world's most famous athletes, is in a Los Angeles area hospital tonight with serious leg injuries. After the luxury SUV he was driving skidded off a California road, rolling over several times before landing on its side. The car was so badly damaged, firefighters were forced to pull Woods out through the front windshield before racing him away in an ambulance. Tonight, police say it appears Woods was traveling too fast down a steep road, and they say it doesn't look like he was using his brakes. And while sources tell CBS News the 45-year-old's injuries do not appear to be life-threatening, it is not clear tonight if the world's most accomplished golfer will play the sport he has defined for decades ever again. Well, we have a lot of new reporting for you on the breaking news on tonight's other major headlines. CBS's Carter Evans is going to lead off our coverage tonight from the hospital.
Rolled over several times. Firefighters using an axe to break the windshield to get him out, saying they got to the scene in 6 minutes after a neighbor called 911. The investigation, of course, is now underway tonight, but authorities did say just before we came on the air that they did not see any evidence of impairment at the scene. Of course, fans across the country tonight praying for Tiger Woods. His agent earlier saying what we just heard from authorities, that Tiger Woods suffered multiple leg injuries and was rushed into surgery. We know Tiger Woods was recovering from his 5th back surgery. He said during an interview just this weekend that he was hoping to be ready for the Masters, though he acknowledged he was still hard at work getting his strength back. And of course, in December, those images we reported on at the time, the tournament with his son Charlie playing golf, looking an awful lot like his dad. Just yesterday, Woods with NBA legend Dwayne Wade posting this video on Instagram. At this hour, of course, we await more on Tiger Woods' condition, and ABC's chief national correspondent Matt Gutman leading us off tonight from the scene in California.
Tonight, those gutting images.
Now we are getting some confirmation, I believe, from the Sheriff's Department that it was Tiger Woods that was involved in that accident.
A one-car rollover accident just after 7 a.m. near Los Angeles. The car flipped over and crushed. First responders reportedly using an axe and another tool to pull out the windshield. It took first responders about 6 minutes to get to the scene after the first 911 call.
And it was like very loud metal noise.
You look at the front end of that car, you can tell how violent this crash must have been. The entire front of the car, including the engine, just completely compressed an accordion, just a mass of crushed metal. Locals in this upscale Southern California community call the road notoriously dangerous.
It's my understanding that he had serious injuries to both legs.
He was the only person in the vehicle. And on that SUV, you can see the logo from the Genesis Invitational Tournament. He was here for it this weekend, but he wasn't playing because he was recovering from his 5th back surgery.
Everybody wants to know how you're feeling, what you're doing since you come off your 5th back operation. You feeling all right?
I'm feeling fine. I'm a little bit stiff.
So Tiger, 7 weeks from today, final round of the Masters. You're going to be there.
God, I hope so. I got to get there first.
You feel like
a lot of it's based on my surgeons and my doctors, my therapists, and making sure that I do it correctly. And this is the only back I got, so I don't have much more wiggle room left there.
Former NBA star Dwayne Wade posting this video on the course with Woods yesterday.
I say the GOAT, he's not comfortable with it, but an opportunity to come out here with this guy right here, man.
For many years, the #1 golfer in the world, the accident comes after a powerful HBO documentary that tells the arc of his life, the history made, and the deep personal struggles he faced. It shows him when he was a toddler watching his father hit balls into a net in the garage, showing off his skills on The Tonight Show, and the tournaments he won on his way to becoming the youngest #1 golfer in the world ever. His mom, always there, cheering. In November of 2009, 2 days after tabloid stories broke alleging his infidelity to his then wife Elin Nordegren, Woods crashed his SUV near their home in Florida. From there, his personal life unraveled on the world stage. But he worked to recover, apologizing to his fans and family.
I am deeply sorry for my irresponsible and selfish behavior I engaged in.
In 2017, his career still plagued with pain and multiple surgeries. Tiger was found by police passed out behind the wheel of his car.
Okay, do you know where you're going? No.
And then in 2019, the improbable comeback. The country that watched him stumble also cheering for his return. And then what many thought impossible, watching him win his 5th Masters tournament. And tonight, just days after talking about yet another comeback, he's back in the hospital. Close friend and fellow competitor Justin Thomas there.
I'm sick to my stomach. It hurts to see one of now my closest friends, get in an accident. And man, I just hope he's all right. Just worried for his kids. I'm sure they're struggling.
That emotional moment playing out this afternoon as well. Let's get right to Matt Gutman with us tonight near the scene of the crash. And Matt, you just spoke.
Secretary. The road, however, is not so smooth for the president's pick to run the Health and Human Services Department. California Attorney General Javier Becerra.
Probably, one of the greatest sporting comebacks of all time from any sport. So, Tiger, we know, can dig deep. Unfortunately, he's going to have to dig deep again. This will be another mountain to climb, but you just never know that man's determination. Maybe he'll find a way to come back again.
Let's hope so, Sir Nick Faldo. Thank you so much. And we're going to turn now to Capitol Hill. Today, the Senate went looking for answers into why police were so outmanned when that angry mob stormed the Capitol on January 6th. 4 top officials in charge of security that day essentially said, "Don't blame us. We didn't know what the FBI knew about the protesters." CBS's Chris Van Cleve reports tonight from the Capitol.
As his officers battled for their lives on January 6th, former Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sun told senators today he was unaware of an FBI alert sent the night before, warning protesters could get violent and go there ready for war. That key raw intelligence was sent only to a sergeant in the agency's intelligence office.
And so you hadn't seen it yourself?
No, ma'am. It did not go any further than that.
In the first public hearing focused on the Capitol attack, the former sergeants at arms for the House and Senate, the former Capitol Police Chief, and the acting D.C. Police Chief all faulted the intelligence used to prepare for January 6th.
Based on the intelligence, we all believed that the plan met the threat and that we were prepared. We now know that we had the wrong plan.
These criminals came prepared for war. They came with their own radio system to coordinate the attack.
Tonight, prosecutors allege Thomas Webster, a Marine veteran and retired NYPD officer, was among the rioters. They say he assaulted a police officer with a flagpole holding a Marine Corps flag. He's one of approximately 275 charged so far. Capitol Police Captain Carnisha Mendoza was in the rotunda that day.
I received chemical burns to my face that still have not healed to this day.
Son told senators during the attack he asked the House Sergeant-at-Arms Paul Irving to approve his request for the National Guard at 1:09. But video appears to show Irving on the House floor then, and Irving disputed Son's account.
Senator, from my recollection, I did not receive a request for approval for National Guard until shortly after 2 p.m.
It took the Pentagon nearly 4 more hours to get the Guard on scene.
There was not an immediate yes. I was just stunned that, I have officers that were out there literally fighting for their lives.
Former Chief Son acknowledged the Capitol Police had never trained for the type of attack they saw on January 6th. In fact, his department didn't even have enough riot helmets for all of its officers. He said they had been ordered, but then were delayed because of COVID, and it only started arriving the week of the attack. Nora?
So many new details we learned today. Chris Van Cleve, thank you. Also at the Capitol today, COVID vaccine makers told Congress the U.S. should have enough supply to vaccinate every American who wants it by the end of July. More than 44 million Americans have had at least one shot, and more than 19 million are fully vaccinated. And tonight, there are more signs that life is slowly returning to normal.
Tonight, vaccine makers vowing to get doses out faster to meet that promised timeline. Enough shots for all U.S. adults by the end of July. Pfizer doubling the pace of production, cutting manufacturing time from 110 days to an average of 60.
We anticipate that will get up to 13 million doses a week. But
stands at Target Field, although that's still far from a given.
Melting snow means baseball must be near.
People are into it.
Smack Shack's Jeffrey Trelstad can feel the anticipation in the North Loop, especially because this year there's a chance we might see fans at Target Field.
Oh, the impact is huge. Pre-game, post-game, it's really important to this whole business community down here.
The Twins are proposing up to 10,000 fans to start the season, about 25% of Target Field capacity.
We're all dealing with COVID fatigue, and any form of normalcy, I think, would be great for any of us and all of us. So.
Twins Senior VP of Operations Matt Hoy joined us on Zoom from spring training, where under Florida rules they can have 2,400 fans broken into pods.
Hopefully it's a barometer for how we're doing on our preparation and our implementation, and hopefully we can transfer that up into Minnesota in a safe fashion.
At the end of the day, it's up to the governor's office whether fans can come through these gates. Today, the state health commissioner said she's optimistic about the possibility, but that it will depend on case numbers and vaccinations. Do you feel that same optimism that there will be fans at Target Field at some point?
Absolutely. Our players feed off that energy from our fans. I think it's really kind of a vital component for them in getting fired up to play the game. So I'm confident we're going to get there.
If they do, the Twins will move to digital ticketing, and they've partnered with 3M on sanitation measures to make fans more comfortable.
They should be able to do it at a low capacity, and it would be great for the neighborhood.
And for businesses like Smack Shack, especially if the season lasts into October.
Let's go to the playoffs.
Danny Spiewalk reporting, again, crowd size is up to Governor Tim Walz. A spokesperson for the governor said he is not ready to commit to a number of fans for the home opener on April 8th.
Another day of unbelievable weather in our neck of the woods. We will, of course, take it. And a good-looking shot from our Skycam network as we look at downtown Sioux Falls. Tyler Roney will be along with the first alert forecast to see if the warmth is going to stick around. We hope you do, too.
Hey, Sioux Falls.
The argument. And he certainly was the first truly global sports figure, and he's immensely important sociologically. But if all those things were true of Muhammad Ali, all those things, if his boxing record was exactly the same, and if he took exactly the same social stances, I don't mean this to be glib, if he looked like Sonny Liston instead of like the young Cassius Clay and then Muhammad Ali, the story would not be the same. Central casting would not view it the same. Muhammad Ali was a beautiful figure in a brutal sport, and that's part of what set him apart. After all, sports in the modern age is theater. It's not just competition, it's theater. Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, Muhammad Ali, a handful of others, great theater as well as great competitors.
Yeah, it's not only gripping the United States, people all over the country, it's gripping so much of the world because he was a world figure, as you know, Bobby, towered not only over the world of golf, but the sports world in general, and seeing this emotional, this wreckage of this car, that has been for all of us who love sports and who have watched Tiger over these years, it has been so personally emotional and heartbreaking.
Yeah, you couldn't take your eyes off of him. And there were detractors. You couldn't really criticize the quality of his play, but there were people who were annoyed that maybe all the attention went to him and others were slighted. Maybe when he wasn't at the top of the leaderboard, the cameras still followed him. But heck, it's television. That's what the public, by and large, wanted to say. And especially at his peak, more often than not, he paid it off. He was always there, either won it or very close to winning it in most of the big events. At his peak, I mentioned this again earlier with Jake, you could make a case, and you could always make a very strong case for Jack Nicklaus, who not only won a still record 18 majors, but remarkably finished second 19 times in major tournaments. So you could always make a case for Jack Nicklaus. But you could also credibly make this case. At his very best, at the peak, late 90s through a good part of the early 2000s, at that point, maybe for a decade, Tiger Woods was the best golfer ever.
Yeah, the greatest indeed. How much do you think, and you covered him over the years, you watched him closely, how much do you think Tiger Woods evolved as a person and as an athlete through all of his injuries and all of his personal controversy?
Well, he was humbled. That puts it mildly. He went through not just a scandal, but a very public humiliation. He had to read a statement upon his return to golf. He was sort of scolded by the head of the Masters before he played at Augusta upon his return. And then he was humbled as an athlete because his physical ailments and the time away and maybe the psychological stress, but mostly the physical ailments, took him down from his greatest peak. Plus, when he reached that peak, he's in his 20s. Now he matures as a man, just with the passage of time and also with the events of his life. And by the testimony of those who cover him more closely than I do and fellow players, he's a different guy. He's more approachable. He's more easygoing. He has greater perspective. Obviously, his kids are growing up. He's been through a lot, and now he's in his mid-40s. So it would be very odd if, considering all that, he hadn't changed quite a bit.
Yeah, no, he has certainly changed over the years, and we heard from Danny Rappaport, who covers him. That's his job.
Always feel it. You can always sense it. People are always staring at you. What are you doing here? You shouldn't be here.
Wood's relationship to American racism and identity is very complex. His very first Nike ad took it head on. And like other big moments in his career, it combined an undeniably strong performance with these issues in civil rights, as well as, yes, self-interest, because it was a sports advertising campaign to make money alongside these larger and significant themes. Hello world, are you ready for me? And everything that he represented. So whatever the motivations, as everyone, as we just heard, praise for Mr. Wood's safety, there's really no doubt that many others have been inspired by him over the years.
I'm Tiger Woods. 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 I am Tiger Woods. I'm Tiger Woods. I'm Tiger Woods. I'm Tiger Woods.
This huge influence and journey would be enough of a story, plus the road to winning the Masters 5 times. Yet Woods also famously found himself on a rise and fall. He faced arrest and personal hardship, and then came all the way back recently, winning the Masters again in 2019. Some commentators dub it the greatest comeback in the history of sports?
I've battled. I've tried to hang in there, and I've tried to come back and play the great game of golf again. I've been lucky enough to have the opportunity to do it again.
Bill Roden covered Tiger's career.
That the United States is back in the Paris Agreement. We intend to demonstrate our leadership in order to spur other countries to raise their own ambitions. Canada and the United States are going to work in lockstep to display the seriousness of our commitment at both home and abroad. To that end, we're launching a high-level climate ambition ministerial, and to align our policies and our goals, and to achieve net zero emissions by 2050.
President Joe Biden in a virtual bilateral meeting with the Canadian president. This as Canada is not too happy about the recent move by the Biden administration to cancel the Keystone XL pipeline using oil from the Canadian sands. That cancellation is actually going to increase emissions if you listen to the critics of this move. What about this and also another pipeline in the news? Let's bring in our panel. Byron York, Chief Political Correspondent of the Washington Examiner. Mara Liasson, National Political Correspondent of
Later in the day, and morning business be closed. Further,
evacuate.
Blank. And trips and team.
The recovery.
I'm wearing a grass suit tomorrow. We'll see you at 6:30 on KSFY.
Susie's got goals.
Leg injuries, fractured legs, and that was the surgery, but there could have been head injuries, which you can't necessarily immediately determine, right?
Well, when he came to the trauma bay of that hospital, they definitely did a head-to-toe assessment in terms of understanding whether he had any life-threatening injury in that moment. So you first look at the airway, you look at the breathing, you look at the circulation, but right after that, you do move across to thinking about internal bleeding, including the head. And so there was absolutely no doubt in my mind that when he went to the OR to have work done on his lower extremities, that they felt that he was stable in terms of any injury he may have to the head. So if there was a little bit of bleeding in the head, which we don't know, it wasn't considered to be the first priority, which is very good news. Same is true of any other internal injury that may have been picked up in that trauma bay. They would do an ultrasound to see if there was bleeding, and then they would do a CAT scan. So then they determined that the real risk here is the lower extremities, those legs. Is there a vascular injury? Is there bleeding that's causing the compartments around your muscles and bones to become dangerously at risk and actually losing tissue? Does he need to have it opened up so the pressure doesn't cause him to have actually nerve or vascular injury, which can be threatening? Actually, that can become life-threatening, and it can also threaten the future of your ability to use those limbs. So the fact that he was rushed to the OR says that he was stable from a sense of his life was not in danger in that moment, but they felt that they could not wait to relieve whatever injury was causing what they saw in the emergency room.
Well, how encouraging was it when we heard the deputy sheriff say that he could communicate? He mentioned his name. He was fully conscious, and there was no evidence of impairment. That's pretty encouraging, at least the initial reaction, right?
That's right. The first thing you want to know is, does this patient have a good airway? And speaking is a very good way of demonstrating that. The mental status is also good. It means that he has enough blood perfusing up to his brain that he can sort of be himself, if you will. So that's very, very good in terms of his sort of immediate need of the risk of a neurological disaster, so to speak. The question then becomes, sort of, are you heading towards a cliff in terms of any internal bleeding or any compromise to the vascular or nerve structures? And that can change in real time. So you have to do a constant assessment. So when he went to that trauma bay, when he went to that ER, there's a multidisciplinary team. It's going to have surgeons, it's going to have emergency physicians, and they're going to assess every second along the way what he needs. But yes, that initial impression is very good in terms of his brain, but it doesn't necessarily mean much about what's going on with his lower extremities.
Dr.
And a role model to your community every day of your life.
You're once an Eagle, always an Eagle.
Sisters Lindsay and Lauren Nedrow earned the rank together.
Lauren, what did you learn about your own abilities, your own power through scouting?
I think everyone that's in Scouts has a little bit of I want to change the world in them.
Aren't they incredible? Nearly 1,000 young women achieved the rank, and we are so proud of each of them. We'll be right back.
Dad, I got a job. I'm moving out.
Dream seek.
For show details, present
infections. Before and during treatment, your doctor should check for infection
possibilities.
Because of his strong stance against anti-war, I think Tiger is evolving. You know, I don't know if he's like beloved like that, but as you saw in that clip with Oprah, you know, racism is real, and he just said, you know, he just told you the facts. But Tiger never dwelt on it. That was not kind of part of his thing. He basically, the sports cliche, I'll let my golf do my talking for me. That's what he did. You know, he's clearly, if he was not to play another round of golf, and I hope not. I mean, I hope he plays many more rounds of golf. If he doesn't play another round of golf, in my book, man, he is golf. He is golf. He is maybe one of the greatest golfers this sport has ever met because of a lot of different things. Not just because of his ability to drive, but just what he has done for that sport. It's immeasurable. It's really immeasurable. And today, man, I'm just praying for him. You know, that he's, that he's just okay. You know, because I can't wait to see what he's going to do in the next 30 years. Who knows what he's going to do in the next 30 years? He's on such a great trajectory. So, you know, it was good to hear that maybe the injuries were not life-threatening and that he's going to be okay. But that's where I am now. I just want to be okay, and I just can't wait to see the rest of him write the rest of these chapters.
Well, everyone's rooting for him. I'm not going to go toe-to-toe on sports history with you, sir. I wouldn't dare. But something he does have in common. No, I wouldn't. I won't do it. I won't even pretend to do it. But that's what you're here for. But the parallels with Ali, of course, also remind us of why people are motivated by sports beyond just the game or who won the game that day. The inspiration and the motivation of discipline and resilience. Ali left the ring, got back in the ring. Some people felt at the end they were concerned he got back in the ring too many times. But people who get back up when we know and we saw, and boy, your inspiration is needed tonight when we saw how banged up the car was and we know how hurt he was. And we all, at a time when we're all going through COVID and everything else, want to remember that any single human can really get back up and do a lot when they believe in themselves and when they stay fit and try to pursue health. I think that is bigger than the field. So, Bill, thank you for being here tonight. I'm wrapping up our hour, and we'll have to have you back to talk Ali again when these anniversaries come up, sir.
Okay, my pleasure. Tom Brady, one more.
There you go. Bill Roden telling us where he stands as always. I want to thank him. I want to thank all of our experts. We are moving through, of course, this breaking news on Tiger Woods, but there's one more thing we want to show you tonight. As I mentioned, there's a lot going on. Well, moments ago, Speaker Pelosi holding a moment of silence to commemorate the more than 500,000 lives lost to COVID in the United States. We covered the White House ceremony last evening. 500 candles lining the steps. Speaker Pelosi joined by leadership across the spectrum, Congressman McCarthy, the Republican leader, Senator Schumer, and Republican leader McConnell. It's a solemn moment that we see there at the Capitol. It's a time when the United States, of course, has been marking this in many different ways. We watched last night and covered as President Biden and Vice President Harris and their spouses came out to the front of the White House and also did the commemoration And as noted, these commemorations should not and are not political in any way. They are just a time for us to try to get our minds and our hearts around the magnitude of the deaths in the United States and around the world from COVID as we continue to deal with that crisis. As mentioned, we've also been covering the news conference and the news out of the Tiger Woods hospitalization after that car crash. We'll continue to keep that coverage going for you tonight on MSNBC. Thank you as always for watching The Beat. I'll be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern, and the readout with Joy.
With the aforementioned Katie Pavlich starts right now. Hey, Katie.
Thank you, Brett. Good evening and welcome to Fox News Primetime. I'm Katie Pavlich. We begin tonight with a Fox News alert. Golf superstar Tiger Woods hospitalized in Los Angeles, where he's undergoing surgery for multiple serious leg injuries after surviving a rollover crash early this morning. In moments, the first reaction from President Donald Trump, who presented Woods with the Medal of Freedom back in 2019. But first, let's check in with Chief Breaking News correspondent Trace Gallagher, who has more information from Los Angeles. Trace.
Katie, good evening to you. Just after 7 o'clock this morning, West Coast time, Tiger Woods had left his hotel and was driving north on Hawthorne Boulevard, leaving Rancho Palos Verdes and making his way toward Rolling Hills Estates. The grade he was coming down is fairly steep and includes a sweeping left-hand turn, then a bending right-hand turn. The LA County Sheriff confirmed he appeared to be going at a high rate of speed. Listen.
It crossed the center divider to the point that it rested was several hundred feet away. So obviously that indicates they were going at a greater speed than normal. However, because it is downhill, it slopes, and it curves, that area has a high frequency of accidents. It's not uncommon.
Firefighters say that when they found him roughly 6 minutes later, they used tools to pry him from the vehicle. Listen to the fire chief.
The information I got back from my personnel and the things that they do is they would do a scene assessment. It was brought to my attention that he was conscious. Now, exactly what was said is unknown.
But reports say that he was able to tell first responders to call his manager and to come and grab his things. Tiger was then taken to UCLA Harbor Trauma Center, where he underwent surgery to repair what is reportedly a compound fracture to his leg and a shattered ankle. The fire chief termed it serious injuries to both legs. Tiger also has a contract with Discovery Network to do behind-the-scenes videos and teaching lessons with various stars, and it appears that he had spent the past few days giving lessons to people like comedian David Spade and basketball star Dwayne Wade. In fact, here's what Wade posted on Instagram yesterday.
I told you I was about to do something amazing today, and I got an opportunity. I say the GOAT, he's not comfortable with it, but got an opportunity to come out here with this guy right here, man. Tiger, thank you for teaching me something. How good am I, or how bad am I? Good. I'm not good. I'm sorry for using that.
We're getting better.
We're getting better.
We're getting better.
So, everybody be on the lookout. I got some lessons today from what I think is the GOAT, but Tiger Woods, thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah. We should note today Tiger was scheduled to work with
Rancho Palos Verdes. Woods was rushed to UCLA Harbor Medical Center and immediately underwent surgery. The extent of his injuries still unknown.
Thankfully, the interior was more or less intact, which kind of gave him the cushion to survive what's otherwise would have been a fatal crash.
On the golf course yesterday with celebrities like Dwayne Wade.
How good am I, or how bad am I? Good.
Woods was hosting an invitational, offering lessons but not playing after recovering from his 5th back surgery. For now, the cause of the early morning crash is unknown.
I am deeply sorry for my irresponsible and selfish behavior I engaged in.
In 2009, Woods famously crashed his SUV outside his Florida mansion.
She is able to help protect herself against COVID-19.
I think it's really important. I believe in the science of it. I've had family members have COVID. Nothing to mess with.
In Sioux Falls, Sarah McDonald, KELO News.
To sign up for an appointment, just go to the Hy-Vee website. We provided a link under this story on KELOland.com. Well, so far, nearly
15% of South Dakotans have received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, according to this morning's update from the state health department. Now, health officials also confirmed more than 200 new coronavirus cases. There were nearly 900 new persons tested. The number of active cases increased slightly compared to Monday. The number of coronavirus patients in South Dakota hospitals remained at 91. The health department did not report any new deaths.
Well, the Sioux Falls Director of Public Health says health systems are seeing stability in the coronavirus pandemic. Jill Franken started her briefing this evening at the Sioux Falls City Council by recognizing the people who died from the virus in Sioux Falls. Franken also said that groups of people getting the vaccine right now have been eager and focused on getting it. To read more about the coronavirus update for Sioux Falls, head to this KELOland.com original.
Another gorgeous day across KELOland. Here's our chief meteorologist, Jay Troback.
Yeah, Don, we melted a lot of snow. In fact, we melted most of the snow in Sioux Falls. Have a look at Falls Park. That was covered with snow yesterday morning, but now, as you can see, with another day of temperatures in the 50s, we melted a lot more. In fact, we're still melting snow at this hour. 45 degrees in Falls Park, though. You do see those clouds that have come on in. We also have some clouds over up here in the center.
Was wearing his seatbelt. Aaron?
It is just one of those things, right? Those basic things you tell your children, and in this case, it may be the reason he's alive. Thank you so much, Kyung. And I want to go now to Sam Farmer, who has been breaking so many of these details for the Los Angeles Times. Also, Tim Schmidt, the managing editor.
Rioters would storm the building trying to stop the presidential vote count.
We properly planned for a mass demonstration with possible violence. What we got was a military-style coordinated assault on my officers and a violent takeover of the Capitol building.
He says he thought it would be something like the earlier pro-Trump demonstrations with the potential for more violence. Speaking publicly for the first time since the siege, the former House and Senate sergeants at arms, forced to resign like the former chief, accused U.S. intelligence agencies of underestimating the extremist group threat. The FBI did send a raw intelligence report the night before the riot, warning of an attack on the Capitol, but Sund insists it never got to him, and the D.C. police chief says it was just an email.
I would certainly think that something as violent as an insurrection of the Capitol would warrant a phone call or something.
Today's hearing also exposed breakdowns in getting National Guard help. Sund says that day at 1:09, he tried to get Guard help in a call to the House Sergeant at Arms, who says that call didn't happen.
I have no recollection of a conversation with Chief Sund at that time.
But all agreed that when the request finally did get to the Army, there was immediate pushback. The D.C. police chief says he was shocked.
I was just stunned that, I have officers that were out there literally fighting for their lives, and there was not an immediate response.
Sund was pressed by Senator Rob Portman. If the Secret Service trains for a riot at the White House, why don't police do it for the Capitol?
When you talk about infiltration, you talk about a large insurrection like we saw on the January 6th? No.
Well, it seems obvious that you would have training on responding to an infiltration.
The FBI and the Pentagon get their turn to testify next week. Still no action on forming a 9/11-style commission to do a thorough investigation. Lester?
All right, Pete, thanks. Let's turn now to the COVID crisis. More than 44 million Americans have received at least one vaccine dose, while hospitalizations continue to decline, now at about 55,000. And today, top vaccine makers were grilled about whether they'll be able to deliver the doses they've promised. Tom Costello has more.
With the FDA expected to grant emergency authorization for Johnson & Johnson's single-dose vaccine within days, the hope is that vaccine supply will meet demand within months. So far, nearly 20 million Americans are fully vaccinated. Today, Congress asked all 5 vaccine makers for a status report.
Given current production levels, are you going to be able to meet that deadline?
Pfizer.
We anticipate that we will be on track to deliver those 300 million doses before the end of July.
Moderna also pledging 300 million by the end of July.
We do believe we're on track to meet those deadlines.
J&J as soon as next week.
We are on track to deliver the 100 million doses by the end of June.
AstraZeneca not yet approved.
We'll deliver the 300 million soon after.
Novavax not yet approved.
We would be prepared by the end of June to produce that 100 million doses.
All of those doses could lead to a vaccine glut in the U.S. Meanwhile, LA's mass vaccination sites are back up and running after being resupplied. And several states are now prioritizing teachers, including California, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Connecticut. In New York, 81 people who received shots have learned they'll need a third shot because their vaccine doses had not been kept cold enough, though pose no risk. Vaccine makers say it's still not clear how long vaccine protection lasts.
Unfortunately, the only real way we will know about the duration of that protection is over time.
Vaccine makers say that's why they're looking at new booster shots that may be required for years to guard against new virus variants. Lester?
All right, Tom Costello tonight. Thank you. In just 60 seconds, no indictments in the case of Daniel Prude, who died in police custody. We'll have late reaction to that. And the wife of El Chapo appearing in court today on charges of international drug trafficking.
You don't want to.
Supporters who were responsible for this attack, but Judy, that's just not right. The large number of people who carried out this attack, they were Trump supporters, they were wearing Trump symbols, they were also chanting and going after some of the targets that former President Trump had laid out, including, of course, former Vice President Mike Pence. All of this is that the White House is really watching this closely and hoping that their Attorney General nominee, Merrick Garland, will be able to handle some of this once he gets into office.
Well, we know the investigation into all of this is going to continue. Yamiche Alcindor at the White House, thank you. In the day's other news, more world leaders appeal for fair distribution of COVID-19 vaccines. Mexico's President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador said wealthier countries are getting the lion's share. He called for the United Nations to intervene.
De 80 países. Out of 80 countries that have the vaccine, 10 are hoarding 80% of it. And the 70 remaining, which is where we and many others are, have 20% of the vaccines. But there are more than 100 countries that don't have a single dose.
Meanwhile, vaccine makers Pfizer and Moderna said they expect to ship 220 million doses for U.S. use by the end of March. We'll return to vaccine issues after the news summary. The pandemic forced President Biden and Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to meet by video link this afternoon. It was the new American president's first meeting with a foreign leader. The agenda included COVID-19, climate change, and economic recovery. UN nuclear inspectors now say that Iran is enriching uranium to 20% purity. That's a big step closer to weapons grade. It is Iran's latest violation of the 2015 nuclear accord, which the U.S. left in 2018. Tehran has also begun restricting UN inspections at its nuclear sites.
Sarah. If you're the security professional, your job is threat management. You are always prepared. We've learned the hard way over and over again, over-prepare. So if you get that threat assessment, that there might be a potential for violence, that there are people focused on the Capitol, you over-prepare and hope that you don't need it. But they kind of seem to do the opposite, and there's probably a number of reasons why they underestimated the threat that was presented to them. But I don't buy that this is an intelligence failure. I buy that it's a lack of understanding of the threat.
Well, but so I want to get to what you just said, Elizabeth, because you served in this in the previous administration. You know what's sort of unspoken here, including in the Pentagon being so reluctant to deploy the National Guard, is that they didn't want to deploy the National Guard against Trump supporters. That they didn't want to anger Trump and his supporters by sort of festooning the Capitol and the ellipse with security. That they didn't want to have too many cops there because they didn't think that Trump would like the look of it, and they didn't want to make his supporters feel unwelcome. That's what I read. Is that close to what you're feeling is the case?
I think there are multiple factors at play. That is certainly a huge one. Nobody wanted to upset the president. There was rightly a recognition that what happened in Lafayette Square in June of last year was horrid and should never happen again. But we're talking about a different situation. We didn't have threat intelligence that somebody was going to try to do something in Lafayette Square. The overreach was that it was cleared for basically a photo op, and they used military forces and combat approaches to clear peaceful protests. We had indications that there were people in the crowd, not the entire crowd, but there were a group of people that were planning violence. it would be completely appropriate to make sure that you're prepared for that violence. So I feel like there's probably lots of reasons that and lots of bad decisions made along the way, including the very obvious one of unconscious bias. And we need to just be transparent about that. That is a very real thing. When you talk about domestic terrorism, people think it's a bunch of white guys that, you know, get in bar fights and can't get their act together and can't do much harm. And clearly that's not the case. Clearly we have threat actors with malicious intent, and they were coordinated, and they could have caused a lot more harm than what happened on January 6th.
Indeed. We are out of time, but very quickly, I'm going to get in trouble asking one more question. Benny Thompson, Representative Thompson, you've been contacted apparently by Proud Boys who want to talk to you. Can you very quickly tell us what it is that they want to talk to you about as part of this lawsuit?
Well, the comment was, and I directed them to my lawyer, George. Basically, I told them, whatever you want to say, you need to talk to my lawyer. They said, no, we want to talk to you. Nope. The lawsuit's filed. You talk to the lawyer, or I'll see you in court.
Wow. Congressman Benny Thompson, Elizabeth Newman, thank you both very much. And up next on the readout, Republicans love to decry.
A few sprinkles possible. 41 Sioux Falls, 42 Aberdeen, 44 in Pierre, 38.
Only played in 9 golf tournaments last year. You're talking about back issues, back surgeries. He's had knee issues forever as well. This is a guy who made his mark on this game, and by the way, it became one of the greatest to ever play by using the most forceful swing, I mean, anything you'd ever seen when he first came on the tour. His body at 45 years old is pretty beaten up, and so the fact that he was already thinking about, you know, will I be able to make that next tournament? Will I be able to be a part of the Masters? And then to see this, I'll be honest, it makes me very nervous about the future of Tiger Woods, if there's any future for him in the game of golf. Well, we're lucky that he's alive, but this is really something I don't know if he can come back from.
I mean, you know, Sam, today NBA legend Dwayne Wade posted images of him on the golf course with Tiger Woods. As you mentioned, right, they were playing together at this tournament over the weekend. And he just addressed the car accident just moments ago on TNT. Here he is.
I picked up the golf club, like many in the black community, because of Tiger Woods. And I got that opportunity yesterday to get out there and get him, you know, he taught me a few things. Hopefully it translates. But, you know, to be out there with, you know, the GOAT, in my eyes, you know, in their sport, and be able to talk to him about Sam and Charlie and his father. And, you know, just, it was a great day. And then I woke up today so proud to be able to post that moment, you know, for the world, and be able to get like a, you know, like a little snippet of our moment together. And I took a nap, and I woke up, and you know, I woke up to the news.
All right, Sam, this is just an incredibly horrible thing.
And these are the kind of plays I'm talking about with Scotty Lewis. Line drives, those plays occur in other areas as well.
By the end of March. Right now, about 1.6 million Americans are being vaccinated each day. But at that rate, it will take about a year to vaccinate all adults in the country. Science correspondent Miles O'Brien has...
Say 15 to 25 miles an hour, and those winds will stay pretty breezy through the overnight hours before dropping off tomorrow morning at 7 to about 5 to 10 miles an hour.
To help reduce your risk of fracture with Prolia. Only Prolia is proven to help.
Are an entirely different way.
Goalposts to influence the public into complying with whatever guidance du jour he's trying to push. I mean, who can forget his ever-evolving positions on masks?
Right now, people should not be walking. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. Putting a mask on yourself is more to prevent you from infecting someone else. And if everybody does that, we're each protecting each other. One mask is good, 2 masks are better.
Here's the thing you have to remember about Dr. Fauci. He's a scientist who is clearly more obsessed with bringing the number of cases to 0 than finding a way for us to get on with our lives. That's going to take a long time, but that's fine with Fauci. The longer the pandemic exists, the more he gets to talk to the media. And after all, who will put him on InStyle magazine when the pandemic's over? Joining me now, senior political analyst Britt Hume. Britt, What do you have to say about Fauci's changing of positions on every single topic we've asked him about?
Well, he has changed his view a number of times as this pandemic has worn on. There's no doubt about that. I actually rather like Dr. Fauci, and I think he's been, a faithful public servant. The problem, I think, with Dr. Fauci is not so much with him as it is with our failure as a society to recognize that he is an expert in a narrow field. He's an epidemiologist. His job is to fight this disease. He's not an expert in child psychology or children's education. He's not an authority on whether cancer screenings can be postponed when there's lockdowns that are affecting hospitals. He's not an authority on the U.S. economy and the damage that may be done to it. He's just not. That's somebody else's problem and not his. So in a situation like this, Katie, when we as a nation turn over all of our policies that this pandemic touches upon or are touched upon by it to a person with a very narrow focus, we end up with these insane lockdowns, and we end up with collateral damage that about which he seems unconcerned because it's not in his bailiwick, and we end up with the terrible problems that we've had, and we end up with a situation like we see where Florida, which has been rather relaxed in its intense regulation during this, in a similar situation to states that have been much more intense in their regulation, which raises serious questions about the efficacy of this, and it also brings into focus the collateral damage that we've seen in so many areas.
Well, he may not be an expert in all of the medical fields that you just mentioned, but he
Dual championships in rapids.
to do is to cause no harm. And if Dr. Fauci isn't an expert in psychology or these other areas, then why is he acting like an expert on all of these things that are causing a lot of harm, whether it's to students in school or to elderly who are continuing to be isolated? He is an expert on vaccines, and yet he's telling people that they can't go about their daily lives if they get vaccinated. I mean, shouldn't the messaging be the opposite? Because there's harm that is done by messaging that even if you get the vaccine, you're still going to have to live your life like we're in a pandemic.
Well, I hear you, Katie, and I don't really disagree, except to say that I don't recall his ever saying much, if anything, about children's health or children's education or the effect on the economy or any of these things. I don't think he purports to be an expert on those things. He just seems to disregard them. And I guess, to be fair to him, I would only say that that's not his territory. And that's why, in a situation like this, when they talk about, follow the science, the question becomes, well, which science? Economics is a science. Cardiology is a branch of science. All those things are sciences. And if you listen to only some scientists, instead of looking, through a broader lens, you end up with the kinds of policy decisions that we've made. I think these lockdowns that we've had, Katie, and the closing of the schools are the worst public policy decisions of my lifetime.
And has been somewhat bipartisan, the nomination of Neera Tanden to lead the Office of Management and Budget, which now hangs by a thread after West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin decided to put his stake down along with Republicans opposing her nomination over old tweets that he called partisan statements. Now, it's worth remembering that Manchin greenlit Orange Julius Caesar's nominee Rick Grinnell as ambassador to Germany back in 2018. Now, you may remember Grinnell as basically a professional Twitter troll. As a spokesman for Mitt Romney in 2012, he deleted his own tweets targeting, among other things, Newt Gingrich's weight and his wife's looks, as well as Michelle Obama's exercising. But I guess since his trolling was bipartisan, that was okay by old Joe Manchin. Oh, and Manchin's also currently undecided on Holland's nomination for Interior. What's up with you, Manchin?
0% APR finance.
Can perform some amazing measured and responsible way to try to introduce fans back.
Fans are required to wear masks and have taken a COVID PCR test less than 72 hours beforehand. Then, after a temperature screening and a rapid test, a green light to enter.
It's a massive building, and we're used to having close to 20,000 people in here, so we're going to have a lot less than that, but I think it's the first step.
And it's not just sports. The first potential concert here at Madison Square Garden is scheduled for late July. Lester?
All right, thanks. Up next, I'll have some reflections on our state of the struggle.
Front page.
Phil will be back with the last look at your forecast after this. As we go to break, a reminder, you can get your late evening news 1 hour earlier. Dakota News Now.
6 million vaccine doses were delivered to the European Union by mid-February, with around 2/3 of them used. That's just a fraction of the EU's population of 450 million. All 3 of the vaccines authorised for use, Moderna, BioNTech, Pfizer and Oxford AstraZeneca, have cut deliveries in the first quarter. Pfizer has not yet delivered around 10 million doses that were due in December, leaving the bloc a third short. Rates of production at European sites across the board have been unable to meet demand. Ursula von der Leyen, European Commission President and German herself, has admitted mistakes were made.
It is also a fact that today, in the fight against the virus, we are still not where we want to be. We were late to authorize. We were too optimistic when it came to massive production. And perhaps we were too confident that what we ordered would actually be delivered on time.
It's led to a standoff between the EU and pharmaceutical giants, with delays set to continue for at least 2 months, whilst production capacity on the continent is ramped up.
Tensions reached breaking point when AstraZeneca announced it would be cutting its deliveries to the EU by tens of millions of doses in the first quarter, leading to a furious row. Those tensions were exacerbated by the fact that there was a smooth rollout of the same jab in the UK, which reported no supply issues. It's forced the EU to turn increasingly inward.
Europe is a major vaccine manufacturing hub and exports millions of doses each month, but the bloc has now placed export controls on vaccine deliveries to make sure that what's made here isn't being shipped overseas. At the
Under 14,000.
Veggies taste amazing.
Reddit, when you post your
Doctor just presented me with the option of
collection you can't.
The president gets to choose his cabinet, and that should be, unless there is some fatal flaw, which there usually isn't because they get vetted, they should be supported and endorsed by the Senate. That should be, and confirmed by the Senate. That's a no-brainer. The difference with Neera Tanden versus the other people that you mentioned is that she was overtly political and attacked a lot of those senators there. I am not saying that the senators...
So was Grinnell. Wait, Susan. So was Rick Grinnell.
Let me finish.
So was Rick Grinnell.
Let me finish. The point that I have is that the Senate Republicans are always hypocritical with anything in the last 4 or 5 years. So it's not surprising that they're doing this. It is hypocritical. It is, I think, wrong. There's nothing in her record that says she shouldn't be qualified. I'm just stating the political fact. Now, as far as the other nominees, I think that the Republicans are desperate. They can't fight the president on COVID relief because 70-some-odd% of the American public face it. And they are looking for an us versus them issue. And they are doing it overtly and ugly and grasping at straws to run those type of ads because they have nothing else. And it's pathetic and it's wrong. And I couldn't say it enough times, but it's they are delivering exactly, they're trying to take Joe Biden's message of uniting our country and foiling it every single way they can. But again, they can't do it on the important things, the stuff that Mara is talking about. They can't do it on COVID relief. They can't do it on moving our country forward, build back better. What can they do it on? Race. And that's what they're doing, and it's fundamentally wrong.
Well, I mean, and the people of color see it. They notice that all the ads are people of color. You know, Mara, I think about, I know Joe Manchin has his own politics in West Virginia. However, he's now spoken up about only 2 nominees, both are women of color. I don't understand what his politics actually are in this instance, because he's also spoken out against the checks that people are desperately needing for relief. He's placed himself in a very strange political position. I don't get it. Do you get it? Because he was for a lot of nominees that one might think were quite objectionable. I mean, he was for, you know, he was okay on Kavanaugh. He was okay on lots of other people in the Trump administration.
Yeah, you know, I honestly don't get it either, but I will tell you that the fact that we are having a conversation right now about what's inside Joe Manchin's head is just a very frustrating example of the kind of structural disadvantage faced by the majority of Americans in this country because of the Electoral College and the map, the Senate map, that we are held hostage as a country by the whims of a senator from a very small state comparatively, who's a part of the majority at this point, but really doesn't represent a majority of Americans. And that really has a direct line to the lingering effects of the filibuster and the blocking of the expansion of democracy. And so a majority of Americans voted to put Democrats in office, not because they want hyper-partisanship, but because they want the country to work again, and they want an end to racist, fascist politics. And you know what? I think that's the message that the Democrats need to seize on. I think if they keep doing the work and they keep a tough line on these nominations, they'll be okay. But they really shouldn't allow themselves to be hostage to the whims of a single Democrat from West Virginia, because if this is the opening note, what's it going to look like a year from now on far tougher battles?
So go to relieffactor.com or call 8.
The money they need. It makes no sense whatsoever. It's a total contradiction. Also, if we don't act, enhanced unemployment benefits will expire for millions of Americans in need. If we don't act,
This time is right now. I'm voting yes on the Equality Act for Evie Newman.
Good teachers, and now I'm very upset that I'm at home, so I can't see them. I miss playing with my friends.
Jago and Gus's mother is freelance writer Flora Watkins. Their sister Romy was born a few months before lockdown began. Romy has cerebral palsy.
We are very fortunate that the boys have each got a screen, we've got a nice house. There are people for whom it's immeasurably worse. But when you see children like mine who are, nice, privileged middle-class children who are in their own way showing signs of anxiety and depression, I found my 6-year-old just lying on the floor of his room the other day. And I'm saying, what's wrong? What's wrong? He said, I just don't know. Let's put this down now. No, I want to go through your maths with you, Gus.
Watkins put her career on hold in March last year when lockdown closed schools. Like millions of other mothers, she shoulders the burden of educating her children at home.
And how many sweets are there?
23.
If anyone had told us that actually a year later they're still going to be doing this with no end in sight, I think there would have been an epidemic of women sticking their heads in ovens. I can't believe we've lived like this for so long.
For much of the past year, Mike Herbert has been marooned in a cramped student house in Brighton. At 27 years old, he's clinging to the hope that music can save him from 9-to-5 tedium. Herbert is currently furloughed from a part-time sales job that was funding his music degree. His lessons are remote. Collaboration, vital for musical growth, is non-existent.
It's not quite depression, but it's nearly there. It's almost despondent.
Herbert takes a rare break from solitude, visiting a friend with a home studio to record vocals for his composition Resist. Strictly speaking, he's breaking the law.
I can't resist! My dream is to become a successful musician. That's what I've always wanted to do. And then this came and hit me like a train.
Feeling much warmer too. Yeah, sure is, Sam. A big contrast from where we were at just a week ago. It's much nicer now. And Sioux Falls was one of the only places that was warmer today compared to yesterday. But overall, all of our temperatures still remaining well above normal. Cloud cover will be building in tonight.
What took so long to get the National Guard troops to respond to the Capitol?
Erin, that is such a crucial question. Jessica, thank you so much. Right, we see them on radio calling, hours go by before that actually happens. It was not for want of asking. Out front now, Asha Rangappa, former FBI special agent. So, Asha, we heard the ridiculousness today that was put out there that is untrue. But there still are so many questions about how, with so much of this sort of out there, like in your face, we're planning to do this, here we're going to do this, that we still don't seem to know who was in fact responsible for the security failure here. Did you learn more today?
Well, I think what we learned is that, as you just noted, this wasn't an intelligence failure. This wasn't a failure to connect the dots, for example, like before 9/11. The picture was there, but it was not properly acted upon or prepared for. And so I think the question is, where in the flow of information did this blockage occur? If it didn't make it up to the decision makers, and was it because of negligence, or was it because there was any kind of, for example, direct or indirect pressure to really not make a big deal out of this threat? We know that there was a DHS whistleblower, for example, who claimed that he was asked in his analysis to downplay the threat of right-wing extremism. So was this playing out in other ways as well in the events leading up to January 6th?
So what about this memo? You know, Jessica's reporting on it. How is it possible that the memo made it to Capitol Police? Made it to Capitol Police that said this was going to happen, and not to the chief?
Yeah, so this is where someone saw this. If it made it to the entity, to the department, the agency, and then didn't make it up to the top decision maker, then someone saw this and assessed that it didn't need to go any further. So that point and that person needs to be identified. But Aaron, let's also remember, we can't be relying on just this one FBI warning. I can't believe that this whole thing would have rested on that. You don't need to be an FBI agent to know that there was a potential for violence just from what was out there in public reporting and the messaging that was out there. So even if that report didn't make it, there should have been better preparation for this event.
All right, Asha, thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you.
And next, one of Biden's cabinet picks on thin ice, in part because Republicans are all of a sudden offended by mean tweets. Now, the White House tonight, though, says it's not worried. They still think they're going to get this one through, but should they be? And Ted Cruz, hear what he's saying now after he was caught jetting off to Cancun on vacation during the state crisis.
Thinking about your financial plan? So are we. Prudential helps 25 million people with their financial needs. With over 90 years of investment experience, our thousands of financial professionals can help.